I'm just trying to think how best to frame this up. Elon Musk posted retweeted. I'll be clear. He didn't post. He retweeted a really, really inappropriate tweet. Okay. And I won't even repeat the tweet here because if you don't know what it is, you can just look Musk's deleted retweet and you can look it up for yourself. That, of course, has taken the internet by storm. And, it's causing all sorts of things and people have all sorts of takes and all sorts of opinions on it. And so let me start by saying everything about the tweet and just the very act of retweeting it, I hate. Okay. I don't care who it is. It's not, I get the comments and the messages. Oh, you just don't like Elon Musk. No, that's not, I don't know Elon Musk. I don't know what really goes through his head. I don't really know how he thinks. And as much as everybody thinks they know what goes through it, like, I don't really know who he is or how he thinks about things. Okay. The act itself. And that's where I tend to focus my effort on behaviors. I really don't like to assess or put myself in a position to judge somebody's heart. I truly feel like that's God's place to do it. But I will speak out on behaviors. And so that's where I will say the behavior, if we just want to look at the behavior of retweeting what this tweet said, there's no redeemable response to it that anybody could ever go, well, but there's not. There's not. But that's not why I want to talk about it. Okay. But I wanted to just get that clear because I inevitably get the people who misunderstand what I'm saying and they think I'm trying to be divisive or political or stir up stuff. And I'm not. But as I read what the tweet said, I actually was more concerned about what it says about the state of leadership and kind of the trend we're on around leadership right now. So yes, I hate what the specific tweet was about and what it had to do with and the impact that it has and some of the things that can be conclusions that can be drawn from retweeting that thing. But what bothered me a lot was the state of what it says about how leaders think. And without repeating the tweet, essentially it was saying some people who did some really terrible things, they aren't the ones that did it. It was the people working for them that did it. All right. So that's the gist of the tweet. You can probably start to piece together what the tweet was about. But what really bothers me about that is it speaks to a systemic problem that I see in leadership all the time. And it is a major problem that is wreaking havoc. And this message is to leaders, but also to just other people who will be leaders at some point. I mean, everybody's a leader at some, you're a leader in something. But my point is, as you step into bigger and bigger leadership roles, this kind of thinking is what will destroy you and everyone around you. And what I'm talking about is this idea that as a leader, you aren't really accountable for what your people do. And that to me is what the heart of the tweet was saying is, yeah, well, it's not really the leader's fault that this stuff happened. It's the people that actually carried it out. If so-and-so had actually been the one pulling the trigger or hitting the button, yeah, then okay, maybe I would say it was them, but they didn't. They were off in their office in this country or over here. It was their people that did it. It's not their fault. And it speaks to this mentality around leadership that you aren't really responsible for what your people do. You are not accountable. You're literally only accountable for the very actions you specifically take. And that just isn't true. And this is a major problem. When leadership gets disconnected from accountability, it goes really, really wrong, really, really, really fast. And I have seen this time and time and time and time again. And we're currently on this trend where there is even more of an emphasis that leaders can do what leaders want to do. And as long as they're not the ones technically doing the bad things, then they're not really responsible for it. And that's just not true. And it's not healthy and it's not productive. Now, before everybody blows up my inbox with all sorts of nonsense that you can't control other people. And Christopher, I've heard you say you can't control other people. Yes, I know. Okay. I am not suggesting that as a leader, you are now responsible for every single thing that somebody else does under your watch. That is not what I mean. And trying to frame it up as that's your excuse for not taking what I'm saying seriously is a cop out. It's a cheap cop out. And don't do that. You know that's not what I mean. You know that's not what I'm talking about. And the reason people get uncomfortable with this is it's really hard to look in the mirror and recognize the bad stuff has probably happened at your direction, even though you didn't necessarily pull the trigger on it. And when you start to wrestle with that, you start to not feel so great about yourself and you start to go, oof. And so our natural response is to go, well, it's not, I didn't say it, I didn't make them do it. I just, they chose that path. And are there instances where people literally go against your direct orders, or, you say, hey, this is how we treat people. And people go, well, I'm not going to do it that way. Fine. You're not responsible for that. But if you know they did that and then you just kind of look the other way and go, well, I don't really want to deal with that because that's kind of like, difficult and uncomfortable and they're kind of a hard person. I'm not really a conflict person. I'm more of a peacemaker, peacekeeper. No, then you now are part of that. You now are part of that. And so we need to start seeing a shift back to leaders being held accountable and leaders holding themselves accountable for the way they lead people, the things they say, the direction that they send people, the values that they hold people to. You are accountable for that as a leader. And you don't get to just go, well, I said this, but I don't model it. So I'm good, right? Because I said it. It's like, no, if you're behaving the opposite, you are literally communicating to the people underneath you. I know we say this, but this is really how we do it. And then when they follow your lead and you go, wow, hey, did you not get the PowerPoint I sent where I said, don't do that? You have a hand in that responsibility. Now, that can feel overwhelming. And this is why I tell people who go, I want to be in leadership. I'm like, be careful. Because when I talk to people about what real leadership means and the accountability that comes with it, people are usually not quite as eager to get into leadership. People are eager to get into leadership when they think I can do whatever I want. And, hey, if things go bad, it's not my fault if it wasn't technically me. I just got to keep myself clean. Like, no, actually, you're accountable for what your people do. And you should be held responsible for that. And unless it can be shown that you did everything possible, not every, you know what I mean? Like as much as humanly possible to make sure that you're setting expectations to go the other way and you're modeling that, you should be held accountable for those kinds of things in some capacity. Now, does it mean you get, hung out to dry or fired just because something bad happened under your watch? No, that's not reasonable. Which is, again, that's usually the reaction I get to this kind of thinking. Oh, what? So you think I should get fired because my people did something? That's not what I said. What I said is, if you are not modeling and living up to the values and holding people accountable to the values and taking responsibilities, let me give you a practical example of this, okay? Because it's easy to talk about it and then go, oh yeah, Christopher, well, when have you done this? So let me share an example of this, okay? When I've been in large organizations, I very much set the tone for my teams that we have a way of operating and that someone doesn't get to subvert our way of operating just because they hold a position of power or because they happen to be friends with so-and-so or whatever. Now, I will tell you right now, that is not a popular position to have. And I have had teams over the years who are terrified when I make this as a pronouncement to the team that this is our operating model. This is how we work. And I don't care if the CEO himself or herself calls you. You work through this, and if you need to escalate it, you escalate it. And depending on the position, you can escalate it directly to me if you really think it's necessary. But this is how it works. And people are very afraid of that because historically, leaders will make claims like this. Then said important, powerful person comes, doesn't get what they want, throws a fit, and then the leader throws that person under the bus and says, yeah, well, they really should have done that. I can't believe that they didn't give you what you needed. Oh, and then they go, and then they gaslight the person into going, well, that was your fault. You should have known that. And the person's going, you said follow the process. You said stick to this. So I will say it's always a tense moment when I start implementing these things with my teams, because people are like, is Christopher really going to back us in this? Or is he going to cut out the second it gets hot for him and let us take the fall? And so I have multiple examples of this where my teams have really made some very powerful people angry because they are used to just getting what they want and assuming that when they don't get what they want, they can just come scream at, that leader or whoever. And rather than that leader taking responsibility for it, they'll just throw their person under the bus. And I've seen leaders literally fire people for doing what they told them to do so that they didn't have to take responsibility for it. And it disgusts me. It disgusts me. And so naturally, this does not always go well. And I've had people who I've had to hold accountable for not following through on that because they were afraid I wasn't going to back them. And I've had to say, no, I said, follow the process. And if they don't like that, you escalate. And you escalate it all the way to me if you need it. And once people realize that I'm serious about it, things move smoother. But let me tell you, that is not easy when you're getting raked over the coals by either a peer or someone a click above you, because I've been 2 clicks, 1 click from the CEO before, where people yelling at you are very powerful people and they have the power to get you fired. And they're going, I didn't get what I want. And I've had to be the one to go, yeah, I know. And that's at my direction. So if you have an issue with that, then let's talk this through. And if you're really going to be mad at somebody, don't be mad at my person. They are following my instructions. And I have gone head to head with this type of thing. And I can tell you right now, it would be a heck of a lot easier for me just to throw my people under the bus and say, yeah, well, John, Jen, what they should have known. This was an easy thing. But I don't. And even if I am like, they probably could have handled it differently, then I will deal with that privately with that person. But I won't do it until I understand their side of the story and say, hey, like, let's go on. Like, help me understand what happened. Is there anything we could have done differently? Type of thing. And then take responsibility for that, but not just back down. And I can just tell you right now, that is not the norm in leadership right now. And I don't tell that story to go, oh, look at me, I'm such a great leader. That's not my point. What I'm saying is, I know how hard it is to do that. And I know how much pressure there is to not do that. And culture right now is pushing everybody to say leaders shouldn't have to be accountable. They can just throw their people under the bus. They can just do what they want. And so what it leads to is then leaders get really good. If they think they can do this the right way and get away with it, what they'll do is they'll do things to subtly set their people up. And I talk to people all the time where they feel like this is the environment that they're in right now. They feel like, I'm being told this, but I literally feel like I'm being set up to be lit on fire at the drop of a hat. And it's like, well, right, because we are creating an environment where leaders believe so long as I can keep my hands clean, I'm actually not responsible. And so I'll create systems and say things with a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And I'll put the PowerPoint up that says, this is our leadership values, while motivating and incentivizing and driving behaviors that are contrary to that, so that when things go sideways, I can point to this thing over here and then go, shame, shame on the person who actually was doing what I was strongly suggesting was the way to do it. And it's got to stop. It truly has to stop. And if you're a leader who is hearing this and maybe a little mad, but kind of going, crap, that's me, change course. Work with your teams on where this is happening. Ask honest questions. And because quite frankly, and maybe I'll just kind of wrap with this, if you aren't willing to stand up and take responsibility for the things you actually believe and the things you think need to get done and the way things need to happen, if you aren't willing to take the heat for that, you're not a leader. You're a coward. And there's just no other way to put it, is that that's really all you are. You're a coward who has a title, and that's it. And you are not effective. You are destroying your teams. You are hurting the people around you. And at some point, it will catch up with you. And you might think it won't. And you'll probably go to great lengths to make sure it doesn't happen. But at some point, you will be held accountable. You can't escape accountability forever. At some point, it's coming. It will come for you. And when it does, the longer you've been playing this game, the harder the hammer is going to fall on you. And so while you might go, yeah, but I'm in too deep now, it's like, well, so what? You're going to keep digging? That's your solution? Just keep digging and hope that maybe if you dig deep enough, you'll be far enough down that you can miss the blast? Doesn't work that way. Deeper you go, the more that's going to fall on your head when it finally does come time. And so you're better off coming clean, moving forward. And like I said, this does not mean you are accountable for every single thing your people do. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. You're going to have people who make stupid decisions on their own. They're going to go off and do something, and it's a teaching moment. And there may be times that it comes to a point where it goes, listen, I now have to hold you accountable. And there have been people I've had to dismiss from my teams because I've said, you are not upholding the values and the things that we say we operate by. And you have a choice. You can either follow it or you can work somewhere else. And that's not a fun conversation, but yes, there are times that you have to do that. And you don't get to go, well, they're just a difficult employee. So when they go, sideways, that's not really me. That is you. That is you if you allow it. You are just as culpable as they are if you know it's happening and you're allowing it. So don't be a coward. If you're going to be a leader, hold yourself accountable, take responsibility for the things that you do and the people that you lead. And if you're not willing to do that, then step down. That's all there is to it.